Over the last 2 days, I was reminded why I tend to stay away from Android material design. You know, it got so bad that if you were standing outside my door, you would have heard nothing but why doesn't this work? What the for, probably hours at a time. It got pretty bad. I got pretty frustrated at times. And I'm sure that many of you suffer from these same kinds of experiences. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you what I've been doing for the past 2 days. You're going to be surprised that it was surprisingly simple and how long it took me to do this thing. Those of you who have been following along with this vlogging series know that my next upcoming course that I'm building for CodingWithMitch.com is on dynamic feature modules and clean architecture. And you also know that I've decided to build kind of like a note-taking application with maybe some reminders and another module that includes settings. So it's a pretty basic app, but it's going to include a lot of really core concepts like caching data, syncing cache data to the network, the classic MVVM or MVI architecture that Google recommends, repository pattern, of course, dynamic features, and clean architecture. There's lots more like Dagger and Kotlin and coroutines, but I could go on and on about the things that are going to be covered, so let's just leave it at that. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you the thing that I was trying to accomplish. I was basically trying to copy I guess you would call it a feature of this app called Trello. Many of you are probably familiar with Trello. It's used by companies, it's used by freelance developers. It's basically a task tracking application, but it's very versatile. Like you could do a lot with it. Some people use it for tracking and reporting bugs, also like a tool for issue tracking. So if like a bug happens on your app, you would create like a Trello card. You could watch the updates of the developer working on it. It's very versatile, but basically, essentially, it's like a note-taking application or like a task tracking application. So let's take a look at the feature that I was trying to copy. So I'm going to open up the Trello app, and here I have essentially a Trello, like a note open right now. So basically, I want one of the views in my application to look just like this, so that when you select a note from the list, so if I was to select this note, this is what you'd see. You'd see the kind of the title up here, and then down below the content or the body of that note. So the behavior that I wanted to copy was this, number one, this collapsing toolbar behavior. I actually did not want to enter that, but so notice if I pull down, the title gets displayed up in the toolbar, and if I was to go up, the title collapses and it kind of goes up into the toolbar. The second sort of feature of this view is if I was to click on the title, watch what happens to the toolbar. So if I click, notice I go into this kind of like editing mode, and there's an X up here and a check mark. If I make changes and I click the X, those changes are not saved. If I make changes and I click the check mark, those changes are saved. So that's kind of the behavior that I wanted to mimic in the toolbar. Additionally, the body of the note, so if I click down here, this is also editable. So if I click anywhere down here, this can also edit it, and notice that the toolbar is changed correspondingly to what I clicked on. So I clicked on the body. Again, same kind of thing. If I make some changes and I click the X, those changes are not saved. If I make some changes and I click the check mark, those changes are saved. Also, it's connected to the back button. So if I press the back button, the changes will also be saved. So notice if I press it, boom, it says updated description, and it's the same kind of thing for the title. So this might look simple, but there's actually a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot of different states that are kind of intertwined. Because if you really think about it, you have a state for the toolbar. It can either be like collapsed or not collapsed. Additionally, you can be in like an edit mode or a view mode for the toolbar. So that's already, what is that? That's 4 states. So you have like collapsed, not collapsed. You have edit mode or not edit mode. So that's 4 states just for the toolbar alone. And then you have another 2 states, so we're at 6, for the body of the note itself. So again, if I click, you enter this kind of edit mode. If you exit that edit mode, you can see that the text is rendered differently. So there's 6 states here, and they are not independent. Like, for example, what if I was editing the contents of the note? So if I made like some changes here, and then instead of clicking the X or the check mark, I actually just clicked up into the title. So that should initiate a save. So that's an example of how intertwined these things are. So they're not, like I said, they're not independent, and you might think that this kind of logic would be easy to set up, but let me assure you, it is not simple. If you can think of a simple way, please let me know, because I had a hell of a time setting this up. Okay, so anyway, let's take a look at the app that that I'm going to be building in this course. So when you first launch the app, again, this app is not complete. It's not even close to being complete. I'll probably finish the course by the end of this month. I'm just kind of showing you the progress as I work on this. So when the app first opens, you're taken to Note List Fragment. If I click on this floating action button, I'm prompted with a dialog to give a new note a title. So I'll just say, new title, and then click OK. So then I get navigated to this note detail fragment, and this is the one that's supposed to look like Trello. I know the colors are different, but again, it's incomplete, but I'm just trying to showcase the toolbar behavior and the contents of the note. Okay, so let's work with the title first of all. So first, notice if I slide up, that title does collapse into the toolbar. So that's exactly the behavior that we want. And there's also a little animation added to it. So it's a slightly short fading out animation, fading out and fading in also. So then if I go to edit this title, so I'll just write edit here. Notice if I click the check mark, the edit is not saved to the view model. If I click edit and if I click the X, if I click the check mark, then that is saved to the view model. And if I was to rotate this, that will represent the changes. Oh yeah, so yeah, rotations is another thing. So you need to be able to maintain whatever state the toolbar is in, whether it's in edit mode, view mode, whether it's collapsed, whether it's expanded, and then also the contents of the note. And all of that needs to be maintained on rotation. So if I rotate this, this should stay in the edit mode, which it does. So if I close the keyboard, you can see the X is still there and the check mark is still there. Okay, so let's rotate back and let's write some content into this note. So now if I just start writing some stuff, I'll actually try to make a whole bunch of text in here. So now if I was to click the check mark, we expect that this gets saved. So if I click it, notice I'm taken into that kind of view mode. Everything looks good. If I was to make some changes, so I'll double click in the note again and go cool. And if I click the X, we expect that to not be saved, which it isn't. So again, this might seem simple, but if you stood outside my door over the last 2 days, you would have heard, why isn't this working? What the constantly, because it was a pain in the ass. So let me show you how I implemented this using Kotlin sealed classes, the view model, and observing the state and then reacting to the state changes. So the first class that I built was a Kotlin sealed class called collapsing toolbar state. So there's two states when it comes to the toolbar. Let me actually just bring the app on the screen again for you. Remember, there's expanded, so this would be its expanded state, and then there's collapsed, and this would be the collapsed state. So essentially what I want to do here is I want to keep a reference to this collapsing toolbar state as live data in the view model. And then from the UI, I can call, view model.set collapsing toolbar state, and I can set it to one of these states, either collapsed or expanded. Then I can listen for those changes in the UI. When it's collapsed, I would, for example, set the title, fade out the title from here and fade it into the toolbar. And then if it was expanded, I'm fading it out from the toolbar and I'm fading it in to this kind of title section here. So that's an example of how you would do that with the toolbar. Next is another Kotlin sealed class that I created called Note Interaction State. So this one controls whether you are editing the title or the content, or you are viewing the title or the content. So for example, when I click in this title here, that enters this kind of edit mode or edit state. So you can see that the toolbar changes to an X and a check mark, and you have access to the cursor and you can actually make changes to it. So that's what this Note Interaction State Kotlin sealed class is used for. So in the UI, I just observe those things, and then depending on what state gets set to what, I update the UI accordingly. It was a pain in the ass to set up, but not because of the data structures and not because of the live data and how this is all set up. It was a pain in the ass. The UI stuff was the pain in the ass, hiding the keyboard, showing the keyboard, making sure that the scroll is working correctly, making sure the cursor goes to the right place. All of these kind of things, which are 100% related to the Android framework, those were all the things that caused me the pain. It wasn't setting up this logic, setting up the sealed classes, passing the states, listening. All that stuff was pretty straightforward. But when it came to working on the views, manipulating what they're doing, how they're looking, that was what I wanted to get in a fight with my computer over. It was very frustrating. So at the end of the day, I spent pretty much 2 full days just to do what I showed you there, just expanding, edit mode, view mode. Not a lot of progress. So what's the upside and the downside to what I just did? Well, the upside is now in the application, I can use the same fragment for creating new notes and also updating old notes, and it looks nice. I think visually it looks nice. If you actually run it on a real phone, I think it looks even nicer. The emulator doesn't really give it justice, but it's visually pleasing. Everything works good, and yeah, I mean it's functionally really good and it feels nice to use. So that would be the upside. So the downside is, of course, it took me 2 full days to do this. That's a lot of time. That is a lot of time for like not really a lot of return, because at the end of the day, this is a cosmetic thing. Was that really worth it? Probably not. And also, additionally, on top of that, this course is on dynamic feature modules and clean architecture. So at the end of the day, I'm probably not even going to teach this in the course itself. I'm just going to probably like show it and be like, hey, here's this cool thing that I did. Hopefully you think it's cool. Like, I'm not going to spend any time explaining the logic, anything, because that's not the topic of the course. So at the end of the day, big waste of my time, probably. Not really a lot of like it's going to be almost no financial return for me. But I hope people like it. You know, it looks nice. It feels nice to use. Hopefully people appreciate the example, I guess. Now, if you liked the video, do not forget to like the video. If you don't like my videos, YouTube does not recommend them to other developers like you who might be struggling with navigating the Android ecosystem, which is definitely not easy these days. So please, if you like the video, let YouTube know that you like the video so that I can help as many people as possible and spread this knowledge, or spread this frustration, I guess, maybe in the case of this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.